because unfortunately Blast Bounty had all those upsets online, it didn't really feel to me, even when I was at that tournament, like this is like the real season. It still almost felt like, an off-season tournament. I never had that full vibe, like it's CS, we're back, like, oh my God, Championship Sunday,
There's other teams out there who can overtake them.
No, I'm actually going to disagree with you on this one. Here's why.
Right, we're back for counterpoints. And of course, we're going to start with the spiciest topic, which just means bitching in the morning, aka what I do as a specialty for about 20 years in esports now, as well as, analyse the game, tell the histories of the players, but also get really, really good at bitching in the morning. If people don't want to know, it's even something I've intentionally done because I'm someone who likes to complain about stuff anyway. So it's like, just make it entertaining how you complain. And that becomes content in itself, the dreaded content word. So my main complaint to start with right now is this, right? Because unfortunately, Blast Bounty had all those upsets online, it didn't really feel to me, even when I was at that tournament, like this is like the real season. It still almost felt like, an off-season tournament or a pre-season tournament. I never had that full vibe, like it's CS, we're back, like, oh my God, Championship Sunday. That's one of the things I always tell people in League of Legends when it's all leagues. And that's the thing that you guys miss is like, it's dope that every few weeks you get a Sunday where it's the finals and you have that feeling of like, a bit like if you watch things like UFC where you have the big title fight, like, oh, awesome. It's only every few, weeks that you have one division fight. So EWC for me feels like Counter-Strike's been good again. But I've already noticed right out the gate, some of the things I hate about Counter-Strike have already happened as well. So even though people will remember the qualifier, all the stuff last week was a dope idea. It was a massive LAN qualifier, a bit like, as people pointed out, really old school tournaments in Counter-Strike used to sometimes have giant fields where basically the first day or two was the equivalent of a qualifier. And you just went there in the hopes you could make the main event. And that was kind of its own part of the quest, of making it. I mean, if people don't know, Pimp actually did that. Like, he went to the BYOC of like the first CSGO major, he just didn't get through. Like, but the point is, if he'd have made it through, that would have made the story so much more epic, and it made it different from an online qualifier where you just wake at 11 p.m. at night and you lose to Russians on the internet who may or may not be wall hacking. Different experience entirely. So I actually thought they nailed that first part of it. That's one thing people are loving, is you have the giant LAN qualifier. It was all BO3. So that means when you had the PC games of the world or the OGs or whoever else lose, they couldn't really complain because they had to play full LAN BO3s. So I was even thinking, mate, this is actually pretty fire, because I did a different show, that one I do with King T, where someone even had the take that like this could be like I think it was the Trav guy. I think he had the take that like this could be like the best format in all of Counter-Strike. And he is right up until this point, Pimp. Which is, so you do full LAN BO3 qualify again, like a massive logistic thing that you do. But then when you get to the main event, it starts with BO1s. And a mixture of starting with BO1s and the like nature of just the fact that it's the beginning of the season. I mean, this is like Blast Bounty all over again, because if you look at the bracket, if people don't know, the playoff bracket for EWC is actually quite rarely 16 teams make it to a single elim bracket. But somehow, even with 16 teams, you've got one of those halves of the brackets, the bottom half, which is like all the big names. And then the top half is all the ones where, here's where people can miss me with the whole, like, yeah, but if you look technically at the rankings, like actually Mouse should have wrong would be. Here's why that doesn't work, guys. Yeah, obviously you are right, but you and I know when we look at the top half of that bracket and we see names like Furia, Aurora, G2, Astralis, Mouse, we all know any of them would be happy to make a final. That's actually a really good performance that they make a final. The problem is one of Mass do now. There's no Mass, even Furia, by the way. A lot of people think they're on the outs, or they're just on the brink of, can they actually win? Did they only get to the final because it was a bullshit bracket at the last major? A lot of people wonder how legit is that. Point is, like, the bottom half is all the names that you sort of wanted to see in the semis and the final. And then the top half is this. And look, it can't only because of BO1s, because not everyone lost to BO1, even though some teams did. But it's one of those ones where it's a classic thing to bitch about in formats. Anytime there's BO1s, I'm always going to complain, mate. I'm just not a fan of them personally. I always say, even if everything else is fucked up, maybe the seeding's bad or the rest of the stuff, the difference is it's just a lot harder to complain after losing a BO3. If you lose a BO1, it feels like I never even got going, mate. This is the beginning of the game, but it's over already. What are your thoughts on this topic, Pimp?
I mean, I think I don't disagree. I would have preferred a best of three opening game as well. I think we always prefer best of threes, but I'm on the standpoint, and I've said that a couple of times when I discussed it with you as well. Like, I don't mind best of one. I think it adds a little bit of diversity as a team. You have to be good at more than just playing a best of three. It's a different format. It's a different mindset. It's a different thing where you have to come in and you have to be ready from the get-go. There's no room for mistake. There's no room for any of that. And we had the discussion when we talked about the major as well. Now, naturally, if every game could be a best of 3 at the major as well, I wouldn't mind that. But I always
By the
feel
way,
like,
well, quick sidebar. Do you only mean this now, though? Because technically, like, if people don't know, Pimp actually got fucked by BO1s a million times at majors. When he used to go to real majors like 10 years ago, they used to actually be opening game was a BO1. And actually, sometimes you could argue your teams would have won some of those matches if you hadn't have had to lose a Randy BO1, some random team, right?
wasn't it all games best of 1? And
A lot of them were,
Veto
yeah.
a lot of them were, and the veto was randomized, so you would ban a couple of maps and you had a random third map decider or whatnot. No, I honestly believe that, and I felt that as a player as well.
Fair enough.
Back in my day, we played a lot of best of 1,
Yeah.
So I think, the best of 3s is something that we started to do more, in 17, 18, 19, and then became the standard, format that a best of 1 would be considered as not good enough. Whereas back in my day, a best of 1 was what we played most of. If you got to the playoff, if you got deep into a tournament, you got to play the best of 3s.
Yes.
And that's my point as well. When I look at the major as an example, stage 1 and stage 2 still having best of 1 opening games, when you're 0-0 or 1-0 or 0-0. I mean, if you're not part of stage 3 of the major, I'm not sure you deserve, automatically to play best of 3s, So there's sort of like another level to achieve.
Okay.
Or if you get into stage 3, you get to play the entirety of that stage as a best of 3. And it's not that as I said, I would prefer if all games were best of 3s, but there's also things such as tournament days, budgets, EWC or Blast or whoever, they have to put up a lot of money to get this going. So I understand there has to be a compromise somewhere. And if anything, I like the idea that if all games were best of 3, then there wouldn't be any special anymore to me. So I like the fact that there's sometimes a best of 1. And as said, it's a different mindset. It's a different game. You can't afford to get off to a slow start. You can't afford to pull off a spirit where you don't do anything for the first couple of rounds. And all of a sudden, in MR12 for that matter as well, the best of 1 is even more cruel to some degree. But to me, that's a skill as a team that you can come in and be there from the get-go, and you can handle that sort of pressure, and it opens up the tournament sometimes as well. So it's not that I disagree with you, best of 3, sure, but I don't mind the best of 1. It's not an issue for me. It's not something that makes me value the tournament less. If anything, the whole bracket at EWC, I'm here at the tournament as well, and I was looking into the rule set, in terms of, okay, so I realized, shit, we have Spirit, we have Vitality down coming from the lower bracket, we could potentially have a bracket
Aurora,
sort of like at the major.
Teams, yeah.
Aurora for that matter as well, yeah, especially when you have 16 teams.
Mouse even went down. There's some big teams went down, yeah.
Yeah, true for that matter as well. And then I looked into the rule set, and it's randomized, so it's basically a number 1 versus a number 2 randomized. So there's a world where I know the bracket we got now is not great. A lot of the best teams, at least on paper, are in the lower bracket, and it's very stacked towards that side of the bracket. But it could have been even worse. Mouse could have been down there as well, and the randomized effect could have really made it a poor bracket to some degree. So if anything, it's more that. I don't know what the solution is though, because when you have a 16-team playoff, which I, by the way, love. I like that. Single elimination, awesome. 16-team. It's super, super cool. And it's also hard to advocate for there to be any sort of seeding when you get into that. You should be rewarded naturally for being first in your group. And then if there were seeding heading into a 16-team playoff, then you'd see the same matchups all the time, right? You wouldn't get the benefit from pulling off a big upset in the group stage, because that you would get into the playoff anyway. And then let's say that you came from the upper bracket, you were, I don't know who made it through, Gamer Legion, as an example. They made it through the upper bracket. They'd just be the worst seeded upper bracket team then, So they wouldn't really reap the benefit or necessarily have too good of a time, because if they were seeded, then they'd face Vitality, who came from the lower bracket, right? So I don't know what the solution to that is, but I guess it's, again, part of the game. When you have a randomized bracket like that, it's up to it's up to chance, I guess, whether or not you're going to have a good bracket or not. And I don't know about you, but what's the solution to that? Like, because I don't like seeding teams in a 16-team bracket. It's going to be too telegraphed. It's going to be too much of the same at every tournament. On the other hand, I don't like it to be randomized either. So I don't know if there's a middle ground, or if there's I don't know, if there's some clever guy out there with a system that makes it so we don't have these lopsided brackets too often.
I've got an answer for you. So first of all, as I said in the opening, I'm also just using this as an excuse because I don't like BO1s. Just anytime something goes wrong, go, see, it's bullshit, innit? Get rid of that thing I don't like, which, by the way, is how actually everyone acts in the political space. Anything that doesn't happen, you just blame it on whatever your pet cause is or whatever you want to get rid of in the world. In fact, there's one of the most revolutionary and brilliant lines anyone ever said in politics was this conservative thinker in America. It was actually an African-American guy called Thomas Sowell. And what he said was that the problem people have with politics and government is that they think that you can find solutions to things, but there are no solutions in politics. Everything is a trade-off. And I actually think, if you think about that, it's a very deep statement, actually, because his point basically is whatever you pick to do whatever you want it to do, it's going to have some negative effect elsewhere in a way that either you or someone else might have to then experience that angle. That's why it's a trade-off. So what I would say here, Pimp, is you did a good job laying it out there. Like, I can fix it tomorrow. If we want to get rid of brackets where it's super stacked on one half and there's no double limps, you can't even have the whole, well, don't worry, you can always go through the low bracket, then the fixes are, as you said, they come with obvious trade-offs which you might not want. Like, for example, make it based on the world ranking seeding. If people don't know, this actually was done in Korean StarCraft, which was mainly a product of the 2000s. That actually was a thing that one of the two prestigious tournaments used to do. One used to just use randomized elements, which meant that even though it was actually the more prestigious one, sometimes you would get some really funky bracket where some guy made a final and wasn't actually that good, you just had the lucky side of the bracket. But the other one that used reseeding the second you made the playoffs. And I can tell you, here's the trade-off. The trade-off was, like you say, it means if someone does amazingly as an underdog in the group stage, it doesn't matter. You still end up going to like that 7th or 8th seed in an 18 playoff, and you just get the hardest opponent. You get knocked straight the fuck out. It's really hard for you. The trade-off was, though, as you could probably be able to guess, whereas the other one would have sometimes some random semis and finals. The one that reseeded used to have like the most consistent semis and finals ever, bro. Like, put it this way, that was the league where, when people were champions, they would win it 3 times in a row. The other one was like you'd win once, then 2 years later you might win, because the bracket could be crazy. Maybe you play the second best guy in the world in the quarterfinals, so you don't make the final, So the problem there is, as you say, one, it's going to make it a bit predictable and it's going to be harsh on underdogs. Now, look, I'm an elitist. I don't give a flying fuck about the underdogs, mate. I'd even say in the modern day, you could argue the politics are on my side. A lot of what we're trying to do with these tournaments, even if we pretend they're sports, is get big viewership and have everyone in the final. And I'm sorry, having Falcons vitality in the final instead of the semis is just going to be way bigger viewership. So if you want to be selfish, that's how I'd argue. Even though I would say, generally, I would, because I don't work for a TO, I wouldn't make that argument myself, because what do I care about, by that logic, what do I care about viewership? It's not my concern, is it? If I worked for Flashpoint or I worked for a TO, I might care a bit more about that. I do want the final to be the one that's the most viewed match and the tournament to be prestigious. The other one also is, this is another one people don't like, but we had something like this in Flashpoint. It's the idea of maybe you make it so that the top seeds pick their opponent. Now, the trade-off there is you directly do lose some competitive integrity. You're letting fucking tournament competitors decide who they play. That's not like the traditional sporting approach. The obvious upside that you get from that is not only can it make you have some fun matchups, but you can have an element of trash talk. By the way, this just didn't work if people ever saw Flashpoint because we didn't have the players in studio. The idea was, if people had been there, it's what Blast tries to do with the bounty formats, just they don't tend to have very good banter. The whole point was to make this a way to banter your opponent, to be like, right, well, the reason I'm picking you is because actually you're fucking overrated and you shouldn't even beat the spot, some shit like that. So that's not a bad one too, because then the argument you use there, Pimp, is if the teams pick their opponents, well then how can anyone bitch about the bracket then? Those teams wanted those opponents. That gets rid of it too. Just as I say, the trade-off there is, I feel like in history, people don't necessarily want a sport where it's like you picked who you played. I feel like people do almost want it to be like you just get given your draw, and then so whether you're the greatest team ever or the right, you just get given who you're playing, and it's up to you to figure out the battle. So I can see both sides of that one. And also, as I say, it just picks in the BO1s doesn't mean that this wouldn't happen again. Like, actually, if it's randomized who gets through anyway, you could still have a bad bracket even if all the favourites won their games. You could still just get unlucky and like 3/4 of them could be on one side of the bracket. It's still possible.
Still possible, yeah. I guess the elitist in me as well, if you want to go full blown on that mentality as well, is that does it matter if you exit in the quarterfinal or in the semifinal? Sure. The only thing that matters is winning the trophy. And if you're Vitality, if you're Spirit for that matter as well, and maybe even Falcons, I think the only thing that does matter is winning. But with the new VIS system and with getting into stage 3, stage 2, stage 1 of the major, like it's mega important, especially now for Vitality as well. given that they play 2 tournaments with JL, right? So I think it was Flamesy who said in an interview during this tournament that it's actually like it's super important for them to do well at the tournaments where they have the full lineup. Otherwise, there's a great likelihood that Vitality enter stage 2 at the major, or if they do poorly, with their full lineup, they may even enter stage 1 because they're not getting the full reap of the benefit.
If people don't know, because of the way like the decay works and the fact that, remember, I have to remind people of this, because they actually fucked up that Atlanta tournament and finished in the round of 6 and then only made top 8 at the major. If people don't know, I believe Vitality's like 5th or something in VRS, mate. They're already like outside of the top teams. So they're not even though we would all, if we had to like pick our teams the best in the world, I don't think anyone would have them below top 3. Actually, in VRS, you're right. By the way, that's even a valid point there too. If we're going to have VRS decide the way the circuit works in invite, so we have to consider that when we're doing format things too.
Yeah, I think that's a very important notion. It's not about it. It's only the trophy that matters. Second place or third place or fourth place, or even making it to the quarterfinal in a 16-team playoff. That matters a lot, especially for a lot of these teams. The Gamer Legions of this world, the FaZes of this world. Getting a win in the playoff could be the difference between making the major or not making the major. So it's something you have to consider. But as I said, like I don't have the solution to be completely honest. As you said, there's a trade-off to it. I'm glad that the bracket is not royally fucked. It's slightly fucked to some degree, but I think we're gonna have some good games anyway. And if anything, then I just hope the teams in the upper bracket, the teams like Mouse or Furia, is actually playing up to their level, because you could argue that Furia in a final.
Let's talk about that later. Let's put a pin in that and come back to that in a second. Yeah.
Okay.
Because we'll do that. We'll do some angles on the teams in the bracket. It's the most obvious way to set up the conversation, isn't it? That's how we'll pick some teams to talk about. But first, speaking of prestige, how things appear, how important they are. Listen, you all complain. Normally, it's Pimp that never shuts up talking about weight loss and how you do it and how you change your life. But actually, with our sponsor on this episode, Hims, you could actually also lose weight. And they actually have a system there that could help you do so. Because obviously, when people have the dream or the goal, like I want to lose weight, first of all, I'll tell you right now, if you just have a wish, but you don't put in place any kind of like steps and you don't have a system to how you do it, you won't accomplish it. Like it'll just be a naive hope that you wish could be the case, but then nothing will happen because you won't be able to take the action that is required. So one of the things that Hims does is they will actually provide you with the things that you can do to enhance it. Like they have, if you don't know, one of the first, let me see, it is let's see. They have an affordable range of FDA-approved GLP-1 medications, including the Wegovy pill and the Wegovy pen, so you can lose weight and keep it off. Also, they just tell you that if you're going to do that, here's the thing, they don't just give you that. What they do is you get in contact with like a licensed professional that basically talks to you about your situation and figures out, are you the sort of person this would make sense to use this sort of a treatment? And then also, it's not just that you use the pill or the pen. By the way, it's also, I believe, the first GLP-1 thing that doesn't require needles. So if you're someone who doesn't like getting that sort of thing, you can just take it as a pill or as a pen. And then one of the other things is they then have all these systems in place to actually support you along the way with like the diet and the exercise part that is essential to go along with it. Like I once heard someone say a line that I've always thought of because it's just true, which is like no amount of exercise can outrun a bad diet. Like I can tell you right now, I'm not in great shape personally, even though I go to the gym and do like 3 2-hour sessions per week. Like my muscles are huge, man. My body's mega. The problem is if I then eat bad food and don't have a good diet, I just have big muscles, but then with a bunch of fat on the front of it. Like that's just how that works. I would have to go like 4 times more to be able to eat as much as I was in that case. So one of the other things is for diet and exercise, they also have basically when you sign up, if you're someone where they determine that it would be right for you, then you can get it all delivered to your door. You don't need any like insurance. They get it all delivered to you. You have to go anywhere to pick it up. Also, they have a care team that's available 24/7 that you can talk to about things to do with the diet. And they have like app things that help you with like nutrition, tips for different recipes you can use, lifestyle tips, etc. So all the things you need to make it like a full spectrum approach to how to lose weight. And it just basically makes it super easy. And so you'll get a treatment plan personalized to you and unlimited dosage changes as needed. So are you ready to reach your goals? Well, then visit hims.com/counterpoints to get a personalized, affordable plan that gets you. That's HIMS.com/counterpoints, hims.com/counterpoints. Weight Lost by Hims is not available in all 50 states. Wegovy is the registered trademark of Novo Nordisk A/S. To get started and learn more, including important safety information, Wegovy clinical study information, and restrictions, visit hims.com. Shout out to Hims. Okay, so as I said, Pim, that's the obvious setup for how we can just discuss some of the teams at EWC, which is if we just look at that bracket. I mean, let's just start with the top side since I bitched about it. So if people don't know, the top side of the bracket is you have G2 plays Astralis, Furia plays Aurora, Foot plays Magic, and Gamer Legion plays Mouse. So right out the gate, you actually have, here's what's funny. What's actually even more fucked in a way is just 1/4 of that bracket, bro, because you have while you have the big names on the bottom side, not on this top side. Even in the top side, the bigger names of those are all in one half. Like G2, Furia, Aurora are all in one quadrant of that. And by the way, they're all the teams that you'd look at here and go, you should probably be trying to get in the final. Little old Mouse is just in the freest spot ever. They play Gamer Legion into the winner of Foot and Magic. Like on paper, they should be at least a semi, probably a final. By the way, let's start with the Mouse angle because we talked a bit about on the last episode. We obviously broke them down a lot on the last one. They haven't played CS much since then. But my angle here would be, if they want to prove that that wasn't some fluke at Blast Bounty and it wasn't just something with Spirit or Halley didn't, or Donk didn't play well, listen, people will be able to go, yeah, but you didn't play any good. Yeah, but if you're Mouse, like, I think you have to at least make the semi. If not, I think you actually have to make the final if you want to prove it, Like, you have to show, even if it's like, because remember, as long as you can do that angle of like, yeah, but I can only beat who's in front of me, then that's fine. You made the final. If you make another final, that is dope. The problem here becomes, it's a bit like Spirit at Blast Bounty. If you don't do it, though, every hater's going to come out the woodwork, mate. If you lose to Game Legion, you're going to get destroyed. If you lose to the winner of Foot and Magic, whoever that is, people are going to think it was a fluke at Blast Bounty. They're not going to give you any. I think if you're Mouse, in a way, you got an easy path, but you have to win. You know what I mean? You're not allowed to lose a close, epic game. I feel like for your reputation, people will just say it was a fluke the second you lose at this tournament.
I 100% agree. I think with the way the bracket was set up and with the way Mouse, didn't manage to beat Foot in the group stage as well. They lost that game, and they lost to a better playing Foot. I was watching it with half an eye as well, covering another game, but Foot played better. Foot deserved to win that game. It wasn't one of those games where it's like, Mouse played well, but Foot were better. It just felt like Foot was straight up the better team, So that's an indicator that maybe Mouse is not as good as we think they are, and now they have a second chance of sort of proving that. I very much agree with you. When you look at the bracket, you look at the way. I mean, you have to beat Gamer Legion. That should be a given. Anything but a win there is going to be super, super disappointing, regardless of how impressive Gamer Legion looked in their group stage. To be fair, they also didn't play a good team, so it's hard to say whether or not they're good. And then Foot versus Magic, golden opportunity for a rematch versus Foot to showcase, that, okay, one thing is group stage, another one is actually in a playoff game, in a quarterfinal. That's when we show up, that's when we show the quality. That's when we show that Blast Bounty wasn't a fluke. So I think that potential, way into a semifinal is interesting. And then I gotta say, when you mentioned the top side of the top bracket with G2 Astralis, Furia, Aurora, I mean, I count Astralis out of that equation. I don't think Astralis are going to make too much here. That would be a big surprise. But I mean, Aurora in a best of 3 could potentially beat Furia. I don't think that is a clear-cut victory. And G2 versus Furia in a potential quarterfinal is not necessarily a clear-cut victory for Furia either, right? So if you're Mouse and all of a sudden you find yourself in the semifinal by beating Gamer Legion and by beating Foot or Magic, and you're getting gifted G2 in a semifinal at EWC, then I very much agree with you. Anything but a grand final would be disappointing. So part of why I dislike this bracket is actually the Mouse angle, because as we spoke about already, we broke them down, and maybe I'm a little bit more on the upside of Mouse, compared to a lot of people. But I would have loved to see them play, I don't know, NAVI, or play Falcons, or play Spirit for that matter, who've been struggling a little bit early on in the bracket, even in the round of 16 or in the quarterfinal or whatnot, because there's also a world where they make it to the grand final and then lose to Vitality 3-0, and then we're left with, as you said, the angle that you can only beat who's in front of you, but clearly you weren't able to even compete against Vitality, and that's not a great time, So I think that's not nice, It's almost set up to failure for Mouse. They have to make at the very least, the semifinal, and then let's say you lose to Furia in a semifinal. That's not too bad, depending on how you do it. But we'll have to wait and see. So I think part of me, that's why I hate that upper bracket, the most. But I will say though that the Furia versus Aurora game, I don't know how you feel about Aurora and how you feel about Furia at the moment. But I think that's a cool one. I think on paper, people are like Furia should win that game easily. They were just in the final of the major, blah, blah, blah. But I don't really think Furia have played that well. And if you look at their way into the grand final of the major as well, one could argue they also had a bit of an easy path, etc., etc. And now rumors are starting to circulate that Yakinda and Molodoi perhaps are on their way out when Fallen is leaving, etc., etc. So I don't know. I feel like Aurora have a pretty good chance of making a big upset, early on in their sort of journey as a new team. So that's the game, at least from the upper side of the bracket, that I look forward to the most.
No, that's why I'm also with you on the mouse angle. Like, it's not even the whole thing of like, you have to just play up to par. The problem also in Counter-Strike is, and we have to all acknowledge this, is in the same way as you get flukes where like, I mean, the example would be the BO one that already happened. GG How beat Spirit. Like, first of all, in the BO thing, I just don't believe that happens. And then second, it could only happen in like an opening match, you know what I mean? Where they're just not a team you're focused on. It's not one you expect to be good. They also don't play tier one lands. But in the same way as that happens, Mouse can also just lose, like you're saying, to a foot that they already lost to, or Magic, who are one of those teams where I always think that's an example of a team where it's like they don't even know that they're not supposed to win these games because they just play tier 2 CS all the time online. So when they come to these lands, they've already done it like the BGL previously. Sometimes they just beat a better team. Even 9Z did this on the way up too. Like, some of these teams almost don't know like their place, as it were. And it's not until they actually have to play a big playoff game that they finally like realize, oh shit, on stage this is what it's like. Oh fuck, there's another level to CS. Well, the problem is, I'm with you. Like, one, those teams anyway, but already did it anyway against Mouse. They could upset them, in which case it'd be really bad for the Mouse storyline, even though it didn't necessarily mean they played badly, because I actually think Foot's a pretty good team. If you ever go watch that matchup, I actually did, I have to say, put a bet on the Foot side of that, because I think if you look at those, I think both those teams are fabulously talented teams with loads of skilled young players. Like, that's it. That's almost a CSDM at that point in time. But then also, yeah, the other downside is, even if Mouse makes the final, well, that's just, they held par, as it were, or they held serve. Like, they didn't show you anything. I'm with you. I want to see that, even if it's a team that I don't rate right now, like, just play like NAVI in the quarterfinals or something, or maybe you play Falcons, but that's your semi-final one. Because I'll also add in another detail, which is, realistically, I don't care who they play in the final, Pimp. The fact it's a final, this is one of the reasons I'm shocked they beat Spirit, makes me think they won't win anyway, because again, Zelix is 17 years old. PR doesn't make big land finals, They're not used to being in the position where you're meant to win and that you're actually like an even matchup in the final. So if they play Falcons in the semis, there's a better chance those players can play how you want them to play and actually have a great game. I think the people don't understand, finals are just a different matter. There's a different level of pressure in a final that just isn't there even in the semi and the quarterfinals. So no, I'm with you. That's why actually the Mouse one actually is not a very interesting path. I actually think the one you're nailing is the way more interesting one. Like, Aurora versus Furia is a really crazy matchup for me, because even though I like the Aurora off-season moves, from the games I've seen so far, they've been a bit of a slow starter, Pimp, actually. I've been kind of shocked like how much hard work it's been for them in the games, even though if you look, one of the details about the Aurora off-season move, which I thought was the slam dunk, has worked better than ever, which is Yimpa actually has had some fucking mega games for. He's had some really big performances. Because if people watch when he was in Mouse, he was the biggest victim of Spinks joining, because he simultaneously kept all the worst CT roles, and then on T side, Spinks just ate up all the lurking he used to do, and so he was just kind of left without any good position in the game, so it meant his stats in Mouse was shit. He looks way better in Aurora, but the problem in Aurora so far, believe it or not, has actually been the traditional players. Like, you never know when Wakadi is going to have a good game. You never know if Santaris is on his game. So it's still work in progress. I'm with you though. Like, I would like to see Aurora win that game. Part of me wants it to go like this. Either Furia really does do a last dance and they can just be elite the last end of the season and give Fallen a chance or two to win on the way out. Everyone just play up to the name value, basically. Or if they're not going to do that, then I kind of want them to get the fuck out the way, and I actually do want it to be the Auroras of the world and those sorts of teams who take the top spots and can compete. Because the last thing I want is like a zombie Furia that's just, lurching around match to match, but it's not really good. Like, they never play peak level CS,
Yeah, I feel the same, to be completely honest. And I don't know what it is with Furia, but ever since Fallen announced his retirement, you look at all the tournament results. If you take out the major, and I know that's easy to say, let's just forget about the major. But outside of that, they've been poor. Outside of that, they haven't really gotten any results. They finished last at the Blast Rivals. They didn't do well in the follow-up tournament as well. And then at the major, as I said, sure, they played somewhat decent, but the road into the grand final was somewhat easy as well for Furia. And I think Yakinda even said it, coming into the major, they felt like they weren't even a contender for the trophy. And all of a sudden they found themselves in the grand final. So even he himself agreed that, hey, it's not looking too well for Furia. And then so far this tournament, sure, they got a win against 9C in a 3-map affair. And 9C, I mean, the 2 games I covered, I think they played well, and then they lose to Magic and don't even qualify for the playoffs. So I don't know how much stock I take into that. So I really do think that with also the rumors coming out of Vikinda and Molodoi potentially leaving, instead of Vikinda picking up the in-game leading role and continuing his career with Furia, which I thought was the whole idea, or at least the whole plan. It makes me a bit worried on behalf of Furia, and I very much agree with your sentiment, that if that is the case, if people are going to different teams, if Vikinda is leaving, if Molodoi is leaving and Fallen is retiring, and they become like a dead team or a zombie team, as you said, then I would rather spend my time watching Aurora or watching Foot or watching some of these up and coming teams who I know is going to be around and have a core that is trying to build upon that. So I agree with you, but it's very hard to say whether that is the case or not. And as said, it's just rumors as well. But I think in isolation, that Furia versus Aurora game should be super, super interesting. Furthermore, I will say, if we just stick on the topic of the top side of the bracket.
Let me do one little topic though. One thing I'll just throw in there on what you're saying is this. Because specifically it was an overdrive tweet about the fact that they might lose both the players. What people have to do is you have to learn, right? I'll tell you a weird angle, right? I don't have any behind the scenes info about most player moves nowadays. Not something I try to be involved in. That's not, if you notice, actually old school classic journalists, we're not really in that side of the industry anymore because it's all about leaks. It's all about getting the info before it's confirmed. And it's more like the back page of tabloid newspapers in football, isn't it? Where, like, and the joke is, I'm a Liverpool fan, mate. They've told us for like 5 years, like, Mbappe is linked to Liverpool. And if you know sports, though, that's fake. That's the one where it's like, even if somehow behind the scenes his agent said it, they just said it to like get a better offer from someone else. You know what I mean? So what you have to learn to do if you don't have the info yourself in esports is this. You have to analyze not the info. You have to analyze the person giving you the info, and that'll give you a sense of if it's accurate. So I'll give you an example. If I hear from KRL that actually he already knows that the event that Messi will be out is, whichever, I think it was like the second one or whatever, and then it was Blast Porto's the one where, no, I think it was Blast Porto's the one Messi will be out, and then it's the other one is the one that if I hear that, well, actually, that's probably accurate because KRL's from the French scene and he's already has a track record of having info from Vitality. So that one I can actually quite easily surmise probably accurate. So here's what's more sexy than people realize about that topic. Because by the way, to just make that comment's nothing. I've made that comment the entire year and told you on the show the whole time. Like, my problem with the Furia angle is, what if both those players leave? What is Furia at that point in time? And also, doesn't that completely change world Counter-Strike? You put Molodoi and Vikinda on the right teams, and those are contender teams, and those are. But here's the key thing: that's just spitballing it. I'll tell you the part people are missing, which is that if Overdrive says it about Molodoi, who's a Kazakhstani player from that CIS region, who people would assume might go to a Russian-speaking team, that feels like a way more like he knows something that we don't. Like, someone said something, or maybe he's even talked to the player privately. That doesn't just sound like someone coming up with this could happen, one of those leaks account. That sounds like on the Molodoi side. I could believe he even knows that. Maybe he even knows the Vikinda part because Vikinda has his own connection to the CIS scene and has played in those. So I could even believe that's accurate. The bigger issue is this, Pimp, is why is that coming out right now at the beginning of the last season of Fallen's career? Because that makes it sound to me, Pimp, not like at the end, we'll do it like, we'll all shake hands at the end after the major. We'll go. That makes it sound they're planning it now. That makes it sound like players behind the scenes already are sort of going, hey, after the next season, like maybe I join you, and then like they're already doing that, mate. And the reason why I bring this up is that's really disturbing. If you want to see Furia, just go 10 out of 10 and just try their hardest on the way out. This makes it feel like people are going to do the dead team thing, where it's like, some tournaments we get it together and we play great and it's no worries. And if it goes badly at the end, though, we just go, fuck it, we're dead anyway. Like, that makes it feel like it's going to be more scuffed, mate. Whereas I want to believe, like we said, I want to believe Furia just plays to their peak and then they break it up because understandably Fallen's retiring.
That's not going to happen, and that's my whole.
There's going to be a circus around this. I can already tell, mate. It's going to be drama. I can already tell.
It's going to be a circus, and that's my whole issue with him announcing retirement early on. That players are of course going to look out for themselves, and who's in a game where we constantly you'll hear the phrase on a desk segment or in a podcast or whatever, that the game is defined by 1 or 2%. That sure, Vitality may be the best team in the world by a couple of percentage, right? Who the fuck do you expect to invest 100% into a team that knows that you're playing with an in-game leader who's already announced his retirement?
Yeah.
So if let's say Vikinda hears that Molodoi is on his way to Team Spirit, to replace Shiro, thought example right here. Why would Vikinda be 100% invested into the team? All of a sudden he's only maybe 90% invested into the team, and maybe he's not willing to do the extra boot camp, or maybe he's not really interested in extra practice or extra individual playmaking. And all he's down 5% in individual level, and if we are to be believed that it's always the minor details, it's a
Yes.
couple of percentages that decides the game, then there you go. There you have Furia just being that one team who occasionally
Yes.
can beat you in the best of three and maybe they can ruin a tournament for someone else, but they're not going to win a tournament.
Yes.
That's exactly why I predicted, 2 episodes ago when we spoke about
Yep.
Furia, that I don't think they're going to win a trophy.
No,
I think it's very, very difficult for them to fully buy into that project when a player is retiring, a guy is leaving, especially if it's true, as you said, that they're starting to plan now, where else to go,
Yep.
whether Ikin or Molotov are finding a team together, or they're going to different separate places, then that will make it even worse, So yeah, the more I think about it, the more we speak about it. Fuck it. I hope Aurora's going to beat Furia so we can see
By the
some of those
way, if people don't know, the reason why we also know this in a way that we don't know specifically about this case is, if you ever are at tournaments, I'll give you an example, and you're at the after party, after it's all finished on the playoffs, and you go up to a player and you go, what's going on with your team? I thought you guys would win. Sometimes they'll just tell you, nah, the team's dead, mate. He's leaving in a month. They all know that. Like, that's like a really famous thing that the second you hear that, you go, oh, in that case, I'll stop fucking believing in him. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's not one of those things where, like, they all have to publicly say they care. And obviously, mate, if you get paid like 20k a month, you have to smile at your boss and go, yeah, I'm trying really hard. But in the back, in your heart of hearts, you know that no one's going 100%, and that if anything goes wrong, like I said, everyone else go, who gives a shit? Wasn't the real team anyway. I'm waiting for my next team that I'm going 3 months from now. I just say that the timing is what's suspicious, bro. It's right at the beginning of the season. Say that at the end if you're like 11th place in the rankings and it's going badly. You can not, mate. I could say we're talking about the other bracket. You could be in the final again. You could be in back-to-back finals. So please take that seriously and care about it, or fuck off and just lose right now. Anyway, speaking of which, this is an appropriate time, since we've discussed it for some of these teams, to do a poly market. So over on poly market in the props section, they have this one, obviously, who was the winner of EWC. Now look, I think this bracket changed that quite a lot, Pip, because there's teams I would have said before have zero chance to win, suddenly have a much elevated chance. I'll even give you a weird reason. I said this at the major when I saw Furia had that scuffed bracket. I'll give you another reason why sometimes it's the team from the weak side of the bracket that wins. It's because you just don't get tested as much, which, look, that can sound negative because I want to be tested, get my peak level like Falcons did. Yeah, but sometimes not getting tested means I'm not drained. People haven't had mad arguments and gone to the limit and had all this emotion before even the final. Sometimes we get an easy run there. And then I always say this, then maybe you only have to play one really hard opponent. It's just a final. Maybe you just have one day that you're really, really good and you win. Whereas instead, like Falcons at the major, they had to have like 3 good days in a row, bro. Like they're doing that major. Like they couldn't have got away with one. That's why it was miraculous. So understandably, the numbers are all over the place on this one. You have let's see. You have Vitality's at 24%, Falcons at 20%, Spirits at 15%, Fury themselves are at 12%. I think probably because of this bracket. Mouse is at 11%. You go down, a bunch of them way low, right? Who are you feeling to win? Who do you think wins this? And is there a number here you'd rather take, if not the one that you think is going to win? Didn't you say Falcons before? Is that what you picked on another episode?
I can't remember actually.
Not sure. Who would you take? Who are you picking?
Yeah. I mean, Falcons look great in the group stage, but it was only 2 games and haven't really been tested. So I think it'll be unfair to say that based on the group stage, they've raised in value. I think it's between Vitality and Falcons, and I don't personally see Vitality being in a crisis just yet. I think people are starting to flirt with the idea that, they're in a crisis because, as said, they didn't win the major and they were knocked out in the quarterfinal and last bounty an online game, blah, blah, blah. And then they lose a game to B8, a best of 3 game as well here at EWC in the group stage. But I mean, last year or last season, we were all saying, that Vitality in group stages and Vitality in playoff are 2 different teams. So if that's the case, and we all believe that to be the case, for 6 months, then why has that changed all of a sudden? Why can't they be the same team that they were last season, where they sometimes in the group stage, they lose a game or they play incredibly close against teams with stand-ins, which they did against Foot, they did against other teams as well, where you're like, you should have lost that game or you could have lost that game. And then in the playoff, they go through the playoff without losing a single map. Like I want to see that proven not to be true anymore before I lose faith in Vitality. So if I had to pick anyone, I'd say Vitality, and at 24%, that's the best value you're probably ever going to get on Vitality with the full roster. That's going to be different, obviously, when they're playing with Jail and when they're playing with a stand-in. But I mean, it is to me between Vitality and Falcons. I think the winner will be in that lower side of the bracket. If anything, I think Spirit at 15% is quite high. I really do think that Spirit so far in this tournament had looked like ass, to be completely honest. The way they lost to Mouse in the Blast Bounty final as well wasn't great. The thing that rubs me the most is the fact that Dong is playing as great as ever. He's finding as much impact as ever, but the team still looks not great. Tenir is completely fallen off a cliff again. Had a couple of tournaments, last season where we're like, oh, that's the Tenir we want to see. Softed coming in and maybe working with him. Who knows? But Tenir to me is like the prime suspect of being removed from Team Spirit soon, because there's so much talent in CS right now, and that if Tenir is not working out, then he'll be gone from that team, maybe even with Suntix. I think Spirit at 15% to me is quite high, to be completely honest. So I'd say if I had to choose, I'd go Vitality. And if I had to say that there's an overrated team in that, the part there, I'd say I'd have more faith in Mouse and Furia given the easiest out of the bracket than I have in Team Spirit. There's no way Spirit beats Vitality or Falcons or both of them to make the grand final and win with the way they're playing right now.
Right. The beauty is, because there's 16 teams in the playoffs, that's why you've still got quite reasonable odds for Vitality from the Traders and Falcons. And also, because they play each other in their own brackets, so that'll put the numbers down, because people know that, like, Vitality or Falcons could knock each other out, couldn't they? So, with that said, I actually think Vitality wins this tournament anyway. I'm with you. If you notice, I was quite consistent in this. Earlier this year, I kept saying every single time, people forget this, at IM Rio, they had that fucking game early on, and everyone's, oh my God, it's the end of the world. I'm like, let's just wait till the end of the tournament, because what we do every single time is the second Vitality loses, it's over, they're broke, and then at the end of the tournament when they win, everyone goes, this is boring, they just win every tournament and no one else is any good, and Navi sucks, who's number 2. It's like, be consistent, you folks. So what I will say is this, I actually think that's great value. I would take that 24% off Vitality all day. If I wasn't going to take Vitality and I wanted to go for one with like big numbers, I'm with you. You pick whichever you think out, Furia and Mouse. I would take Furia. I would say, look, there's a world I could see where Furia make the final and they play even a Vitality or Falcons, but they just have like everyone plays their best game. Your Kinder has a map where he's a demon. Urioba performs. Keserato stim. It's just plausible they could win that series. Also, I mean, let's throw it out there. The map pool's different now. Who knows what's going to happen with cash in the mix, etc. I think that'll make some of the BO5s a bit spicier. So I also don't hate that. 12% is an excellent number. I might consider that if I wanted to fly, but I think I would just be boring and take Vitality. I think they win this one personally. So going back to the bracket, I will tell you what is an interesting one right out the gate, which is this. If you actually look, Pimp, at Vitality's part of the bracket, so they start with FaZe Clan. That's not actually as easy a match as that would have been like 2 months ago. You look at that one. Hey, if you're FaZe, you're going to be mad up for that game. I mean, you're sort of trying to prove you're legit. And then if you win that, you play the winner of Bait and Spirit. Well, Bait's the team that actually beat you already in the fucking group stage. So be spicy to rematch them, even though I think, by the way, you would destroy them if you play them this time. And then the other one is Spirit, who historically, by the way, Vitality just always beats, and actually doesn't even matter how Dong plays. But I'll tell you what, if you are Vitality and people want to believe you're fragile, maybe there's some chances. There's a few rakes here you could stand on that could hit you in the face, as it were, Pim. Do you have any concerns about that? I mean, is this a moment where they can stumble?
I don't think so, to be completely honest. I'd be more worried if Vitality were playing Falcons early on or Navi, to be completely honest. As I said, I really do think Spirit right now look poor, and sure that can change in the playoff, and all of a sudden, they have a different outlook to them. But I haven't been impressed with whatever I've seen from Spirit basically ever since the break, So I'm not too high on them, and historically speaking as well, as you said, Vitality have no issues beating Spirit, so I wouldn't be too worried. If anything, I think Bait have a pretty decent chance at beating Spirit, and I would love to see Vitality play Bait in a rematch, just to get that confirmed, because there's also a side story to that, and that is Bait, that I don't know what it is with them. At the major, they looked slightly better, but not great, and not back to the level where you're like, oh, maybe they're like, sort of like Foot, maybe they're interesting. Maybe there's some of these players who are going to go above and beyond and go somewhere else. But whenever you hear them in interview, whenever you hear NPL speak about the team, he's like, we're in great form right now. We're doing well in practice. We came in with a lot of confidence. Like, at least they themselves believe that they're a good team, So I would like to see Bait prove that. And if you can beat Spirit, who's not on top of their game, then that's massive. That's a massive step in the right direction. So I think there's different ways that could pan out. To be completely honest, with the whole FaZe angle, yeah, FaZe are playing better, and take nothing away from them. And they're competitive again, We spoke about it, 3 episodes ago, that all they had to do was not be worse off than the old iteration of FaZe, which was almost impossible, right? The bar was set so low, but I think they're playing much better than I expected this early on. I think Twist is doing a good job as an in-game leader. I think they're getting the most out of the lineup they have right now, but there's a limitation to FaZe, right? I look at the player material, I look at the players, and I look at how that team is constructed right now, and I think what they're doing right now, where they sort of like are in conversation to be maybe top 8, top 10, top 12, whatever, in that range. I think that's the limit as well. I don't think FaZe is one of those teams that's going to knock on the door and be like, okay, now they're more likely to enter top 5 than G2 all of a sudden, or they're more likely to enter top 5 than Aurora will be, with a bit of time together. So I see them having a limitation, and I don't see Vitality losing to a team that at best will be top 8. I firmly believe, as I said, Vitality in a playoff game is a different team and have a different focus and a different sense of urgency. They're playing at home turf. We're also moving from the first, portion here of the group stage was on the smaller stage at EWC. So basically, for those unaware, there was a crowd, but the crowd couldn't listen to the casters because of the competitive integrity of the game. I guess the setup wasn't allowing, for logistic reasons for that to happen. So people were watching, but all they watched was a couple of screens with the game sound on, So the environment wasn't really that great. Now for the playoff, we're moving into the big stage in the big hall, and there's going to be space for what, 2,000 or 3,000 people, French people, and it's been pretty much filled every day with Rocket League and with Rainbow Six Siege and whatnot. Like the French people are really showing up for the French teams. So Vitality are also going to play on home turf, and I think it's for many, many reasons is very important for them to do well. We spoke about the VRS implications of them playing with Jail as a stand-in, them not making it far the major. So it's important to get a good result here. We're talking about them potentially going into the grand final and winning another trophy on home soil in Paris, where the club is located. We're talking about them going into Aco Arena as well, where they won the Blast Major. I think there's a lot of good reasons as to why this team should be motivated, and the way Apex speaks about it as well, I had him quoted somewhere for saying that it may be the last time ever he can win a trophy in France. It may be the last time ever he gets to play on home turf for him and Cyber, right? So if that's not enough of a motivation for Vitality to be the playoff Vitality we know, then nothing will be. So I'm very, very calm and very confident that Vitality will beat FaZe. They'll also make it to the semifinal. Then against Falcons, if Falcons are as good as we think they are, Falcons is the team that I think will make the semifinal, then, they can lose that game. It's a best of 3, and that can go both ways, to be honest. So it's not a guarantee that I have Vitality making it to the grand final, but at least I expect them to be hyper competitive. And if you want to beat them, you have to play exceptionally well. And the only team I can see play exceptionally well from the bottom side of that bracket to beat Vitality would be Falcons.
Well, here's the thing. My counterpoint to that would be, at the moment, Vitality doesn't play 10 out of 10 CS, though. So at the moment, you don't need to be the team from season 1. You're right. This was season 1. You had to play like the game of your life to beat them. And in fact, sometimes I think NAVI even did play the game of their lives and still not beat them. And still have come up just short and be like, what the hell are we supposed to do? But actually, this season, they already look more beatable at the moment anyway. But here's the bigger thing. I'll do a similar form of analysis as to what I said about the Overdrive comment. I'll tell you, and a bit like what I've done with Furia, where I've teased it from the second they said that about Fallen retiring. I was like, let's see how this affects the team. Does this actually mean people give up? Does it mean they play harder because they want to win on the way out? At the moment, it seems like it's the former. It seems like they've all just checked out and they're just waiting for their fucking contracts to run down. Similarly, I'll set up in the future, down the highway, the signpost, get off in 5 miles, right? Here's an angle on Vitality that people are missing. Bro, what you just said there about Apex, people are missing this. There is some really weird messaging coming out of Vitality right now. I thought what was happening is this, Pimp. We've got the greatest team of all time. We're only on the 2nd year of having this roster. We're obviously going to run the roster as long as we can because we keep winning tournaments and we're still a threat to win majors. In fact, remember, in season 1, the whole topic was about let's get the most trophies ever. Let's beat Astralis. It's all about fighting history. Starting in the 2nd season, if the news is just, look, because 2 of our members are having children and we've won everything, we're going to sort of be nice to them and say, you know what, on tournaments that are just in the middle of the season that aren't massive prestige trophies, you can skip the tournament. Just go and watch the birth of your kids. It's almost like a reward for how great they've been the last 2 years. Those aren't the tournaments we live and die on, and there's bigger things than a random blast event. Go and watch the birth of your kid. If that was true, Pimp, then fine. You do that, you come back, fucking revved up, right, well, now I've done the real life thing, but I'm back in the game now. I'm going to dominate. Here's what's really weird. Because one of the players stepping out of the lineup is Apex, so it means that the tournament where he will be missing and JL will stand in instead of him, it's implied Messi or Flames will be the IGL, right? They were talking about this angle, that like that's one of the things they're working on, the idea maybe Flames can be a leadership figure. And here's what's weird. If you add that to what you're saying here about Apex making that comment, it actually makes it sound like the team has started to think on a bigger picture scale of a future without Apex, which is weird to me, mate, because to make like a French version of the Furia angle, we don't know yet when Apex retires though. And if we really don't know, I actually think that's almost like an inappropriate conversation, mate. What if he plays 2 more years? And what if Vitality has to say, what if they still have Z1 Rob, so he's still a contender? Like, to me, that's not even look, the org should be having that convo. Whoever it is at the top, Neo, whoever the fuck the X-Stars, they should maybe be flying for the future, like in football team, you know, what happens next year when a contract runs out, who do we need? But the idea the team themselves are mentioning that is really weird, because actually if people saw, they did an interview with the person who's like the sports psych guy there, and he basically mentioned something like this, that like, I think it was Flames that he referenced, that they were sort of like testing him out for like leadership qualities or something. It's like, bro, this feels like a really early conversation to have publicly though, because that does sort of imply you're looking at a future Vitality that doesn't feature Apex. And I get it, because of his age, it's very unlikely anyone's going to have Carrigan's career length and really play till they're like 36, 37. I mean, Carrigan himself barely managed it, mate. You could argue a lot of people want him done after FaZe, but I think this is almost like, that's one thing, I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. I'm putting a little pin in it now though, so we can all check at the end of the season. If we hear any more rumours like this, I'll start to get a bit concerned, mate, because the other problem is, it's one thing to lose in the server, but these are the sort of discussions which almost take you out with the game outside of the server, and you start to wonder how committed to the project are people. Are people already planning for like, right, but as soon as it goes bad, you know, maybe you retire and this guy, what are we doing? Like, to me, if I'm in Vitality, it's like, look, leave that to the people who are the suits and the people at the top of the org. Like, inside the team, we can win everything now, boys. Like, we could in the second season, yeah, we've got a couple of events we can't play because of this birth thing, but we could still win the major and be right back into 2027. Could be our year. We could be the number 1 team there. I think that's just the only thing I'm concerned about. Is like one of those things of like, why are you saying this publicly? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean, and it is a bit weird, but it's also a weird scenario. You know, I don't think any team has ever had a scenario where 2 players are having, you know, or getting children, you know,
Sure.
giving birth to children back to back almost at a tournament like that, and have to give space to both of them. You know, there's been occasions before where one guy has to sit out, you know, for a tournament, and then they come back, and it was just one tournament, one stand-in. But this is back to back, and it's 2 different players, etc., etc. So I think a lot of that confusion in the communication is probably also stemming from the fact that they haven't really been exposed to something like that before.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know. I get what you're saying, and it's definitely something to, as you said, it's something to keep an eye on. You know, to see if it develops.
Just track it. It's not a panic stations yet, but just track it. Could become something in the future. You know, we one day might look back and go, wait a minute, what was that thing Thorin said? Exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's a reasonable thing to do. You know, I like when you're putting in a pin early on. You know, so you can always go back to it. But I'll be honest. You know, also when I listen to you describing it, I'm not worried at all, to be completely honest. Like I'm really not worried on behalf of Vitality. I'm not worried about them having to play with a stand-in either. You know, Flamesy said in an interview as well, I think that was with Freya or someone else here at EWC as well, that, you know, he's already looking forward to the major. He's already looking forward to when they have the full lineup together again, you know, because he believes that, you know, with Messi going out, with Apex going out, sure thing, they are going to play with JL, they're going to try their best, you know, but they also put themselves in a scenario where they're going to have a long boot camp leading up to the second major, where they should be motivated, you know, they should be fresh, they should be happy they're all together. So I don't think there's any, you know, I don't think there's anything internally that suggests to me that certain players are on their way out, or certain players are thinking to themselves that maybe in a half year's time that they're going to find somewhere else to play or whatnot. Like it to me, it just feels like it's almost an earned right in some sense, you know, that they've been so good for so long that they can have 2 tournaments where they play with JL and not have Apex and not have Messi, and it'll be fine, and they'll come back together. And he also did say, you know, that even if we don't do well at these tournaments and we have to start at stage 1 or stage 2 at the major, then he's not worried at all, you know, because he's certain that once they get back together and get to properly practice and actually focus on a goal that's important for them, they'll be the best in the world, you know. So he's still speaking with that kind of confidence, you know, and as long as he's doing that, then I'm not worried, to be honest.
Okay. Well, we will continue on with some of our picks in the bracket, but what about picks in sports in general? Because this episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. And obviously, sports never ends, but some of the sports right now that are heating up are like women's basketball is a big one people are watching because we're waiting for the NBA itself to start again. When the NBA starts, I'm actually looking forward to it. There's some spicy rosters. LeBron's moved for like a really low contract to a potential contender. There's some interesting mixes around about who can be, but I just think the Knicks won't be as good again. One of the cool things about Prize Picks is it's really, really simple to play. You just pick between 2 and 6 of their projected stats predictions, where they'll just give you a player and a number. You pick the one you like, and then you just do more or less. It's easy. So it'll say like how many 3-pointers will Steph Curry make in a game? Maybe it's like 2.6. Okay, for this opponent, I think he'll make more, so I'll pick more for that one. Then on another one, how many rebounds will Joel Embiid get for the 76ers? Okay, I'm going to take less for that one. Maybe to get back to back, and he's a guy's a bit lazy in the regular. You know, you can do a little bit of like scoffed analysis, and it's just fun because it's really quick. You just do it. You can also tail other people's picks. You can show people yours via all the social components, etc. Also, they are actually a partner of the NBA itself now, by the way. So there's interest, and I'm looking forward to when American football starts soon. That's not too far away. I think it's actually one of the best sports because of how many components there are in which to do different stats-based things. It's a spot where people go really hard on all the advanced stats. So it's really simple to do. You make your lineup in barely any time at all. So download the app today and use code COUNTER to get $150 instantly in lineups if you win your first $5 lineup. Download the app today and use code COUNTER to get $150 instantly in lineups if you win your first $5 lineups. Prize Picks, America's #1 sports picks app. Thanks to Prize Picks. Okay. Another angle is this, Pimp. If I also go and look at that bracket, a matchup I'm immediately looking at is if I assume NAVI beats Legacy and Falcons beats Mongols, you know, the favourites, then we'll get NAVI versus Falcons in the round of 8. Now, this actually, I think, is potentially a really interesting and a fun game, because one thing I love about this is I actually think a lot of people are out on NAVI because they didn't make the roster move. I mean, it's basically implied if you saw that like HLTV comments by Blade and Just Striker. Like, it's implied they tried to. They just couldn't get the person they wanted, essentially. And
sorry. Am I the only one who just read between the lines and like they tried to buy Sensu, they tried to get Sensu, but BC Game outbid them, you know, or BC Game gave him a high salary.
Absolutely,
like, I literally just had Sensu in the headline, and the only thing Blade didn't do was mention Sensu. That's his name, right?
I mean, pretty
obvious.
I think it is implied to me, yes. But that also, by the way, it also implies, notice, like, they not only want specifically their player, like, if they don't get him, they're not going to do that thing where you just go and get anyone. They want specifically the player they wanted, which is, it makes sense for Blade. He's also earned the right to ask for whoever he wants in his project. But I'm with you as well. It also implies, and this is quite key, I think, in light of the McCarthy and smaller players they've signed, NAVI isn't a team that's going to go and spend like $2 million and buy some massive name. That doesn't feel like who they are at the moment. They also, it's sort of implied they've got to get their right man at the right price too. Like, I'm sort of with you on that one. I even wonder if part of the reason they wait is they just see at the end of the year, if BC Games shit, and just go, Sensu, just come now, mate. Like, we'll pay the price and we'll get you the deal. You're the one we want, you know, we're courting you, as it were. No, I'm with you on that. But the reason why I think it's spicy is because it has made a lot of fans, because of Falcons winning the major and this like massive team. Also, people hope Spirit will be good because of the major. I think a lot of people looked at NAVI, and I know loads of people who were like, they're not going to be top 5, they're going to be irrelevant now, etc. This is a matchup, mate, if they play Falcons, where they can immediately prove all of that wrong. Because one thing I look at this matchup, even though I'm a big Falcons fan, is I look at it and go, yeah, but the thing about NAVI is they tend to have a very good floor to their game because how well coached they are, how well the pieces fit. And I actually think if you're Falcons, that's a tricky task. People will forget. At the major, that was the team that almost beat them in the group stage and would have had them in like death's door, mate. They were in really bad shape until that was the first match where Carrigan pulled the Anubis shenanigans on the decider and did a bunch of hero calls. Also, on the Falcons side, the reason I've never gone crazy, even though I was one of the few people who thought they could win the major, is you saw what it took to win the major, mate. Almost every player had to have like a massive stat step up. People like Kiyosuke had like the playoffs of their life. Even people like Tessus were dropping best of 3s where the numbers were way bigger than should ever be for like, you know, fucking Anchor on like sites that don't even normally get frags. Like, I still think people are taking Falcons and putting them way too high because of the major and treating NAVI like they're trash. It's still the same NAVI, mate, from the other season that used to take care of everyone they played except Vitality. They used to just move through brackets, no matter what. Even if people don't think their CS is sexy, I'll tell you what, it's fucking effective though. So I'm actually looking forward to that matchup. I think that matchup is a good test for both teams. If Navi wins it, then fuck all this doomerism about Navi. Yeah, they're probably not going to be number one, but they're still in the mix, man. They're still good. And if you're Falcons, I actually think that's not a match you can look past, me. Forget all that. Like that again. You think someone like Blade, given time, isn't going to like download all the demos and find all the areas you are a bit weaker and you're making a bit of sketchy calls here and there that you're relying on individual talent. Like, mate, the bad part about individual talent is it can just not turn up sometimes. Then what have you got? You're in a tough spot. What do you think if we get this matchup? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with if people are saying that it won't be tough, like if Navi won't be top five and Navi won't be still a good team, then I don't know where that's coming from. I think my issue and my angle the entire time has been that I think Navi could be potentially the team to take over for Vitality.
Yeah.
I think they have potential to be the best team in the world with a proper signing, or with a proper player more, so to speak, So that's my angle on it. They'll still be competitive. They'll still be, to me, they're still the gatekeepers of top four. There's still going to be a team that's always incredible, tough to beat, and that's just down to Blade, the way they prepare, the way they have a solid foundation. I feel like Navi is one of those teams where if you exclude Vitality from the equation, unless you're playing your A game or your B game, Navi will be good enough to punish you for that every single game, just by the raw fundamentals and how structured they are and how well they play on a lot of different maps as well. It does feel like Navi is this classic team, where they're good in every aspect of the game. They have a pretty strong map pool, but they're not great, in any aspect of the game. It's not like they have a superstar Orba. It's not like they have a superstar Rifler. It's not like they have a couple of maps where you'd argue that Navi are the best in the world on XYZ map, but they're good on pretty much every single map, and they're good in pretty much every single aspect of the game. They're just not the best. The only I guess position you'd argue they're better than other teams would be the coaching position with Blade, but it's so hard to quantify how much of a difference he can actually make, when the game is live. So in that regard, I agree. Navi is still going to be good, but I don't think they're going to be better than they were last season, and that's not too bad. They won 2 trophies. They were at a time, maybe the second best team in the world. They were. People forget, but coming into Cologne, a lot of people had them, equally up there with Vitality, given that they beat them at Atlanta. People had them as title contenders. So if they haven't changed the roster, then why should that change all of a sudden? I will say the caveat to that though is that, I mean, it's a tough exercise. And it's a very dangerous game. Blade is playing by going out publicly and confirming that we were close changing, and maybe we would have changed if BC game didn't exist, and outbid Sensu, and who knows who would have been replaced. One can only imagine that it would have been Ima. So how do you, from an organizational standpoint, talk to Ima about that and reassure him that okay, we were looking into potentially replacing you. It didn't happen this time around, so you're still part of our squad. You're equally important as you always been. Blah blah. Like it's a tough exercise both for the organization, for the coach, but also for the player Ima. Right. So if anything, look out for how Ima is playing in a potential game against Falcons, because that's been the second notion to that. I feel like Ima is not like he's the classic player right now where he's not playing himself off the team. Ima is doing fine. He's doing a decent job. I don't think he's a bad player. He's just not an excellent player. He's not a great player. He's just a good player, right? So it's sort of like you see it in football sometimes where a player is not necessarily playing himself out of the starting 11. There's just another guy on the bench, who's better, or who came in and had a pretty good showing for 1 or 2 games, and then all of a sudden you're on the bench, So there's different ways of getting benched. Often we refer to people getting kicked from teams of getting benched that, okay, he underperformed for a long time. It was bound to happen. Someone had to replace him, and he had happened. I don't think that's the case for Ima per se. I think he's doing a decent job, and in the group stage in EWC, he was playing well, but his problem has always been his performance in big games against good teams. He's sort of like farming against some of the top 10, top 15, top 20 teams. A bit of a group stage warrior to some degree as well, and then he's struggling to really do super well against the best team. But last time they played, as you said, on Anubis, he was the highest rated player for Navi in the major against Falcons. So it seemingly is also something that he's getting better at, and I think he's gotten better the last couple of months. So to me, it's going to be interesting to see how he's going to handle, potentially knowing that he was close to getting cut, but now he's getting a second chance. Could be another Sipnik scenario, back in the Astralis day where he was basically being told, you have 2 tournaments to prove that you're getting better, otherwise we're going to cut you. And all of a sudden, Sipnik went from being decent to the best clutcher, the best anchor, the best support player ever. That was exactly the push that he needed. Well, maybe this is exactly what Ima needed in order to take it a step further, right? But it is a delicate situation. Either way, just to summarize it, I'm not worried on behalf of Navi, but I still don't see Navi. I don't see them like if Falcons is as good as I think they are, then Falcons will beat Navi as well. But if Falcons is the Falcons as of old before the major, where they play exceptionally well in one game and then they show up to a quarterfinal with their B game or their C game against Navi, then Navi is good enough to beat any team in the world apart from Vitality when they're playing the B game. Simple as. The foundation, the way they play the game, the fact that they have no weak link per se is good enough to be competitive against anyone but Vitality, unless Vitality is playing the C game.
Right, two things about Navi. One, if Emma doesn't like that, by the way, I can tell you now, mate, it'll be a blessing that you leave Navi then, because I can tell you, if you don't know Blade, he is very stereotypically like Eastern European dad in that sense. Like, oh, he's the guy that'll just let you know. Like as you said, you're not doing any problem right now, but look, you're the person I will replace if I get the right player, though. And in this case, it's actually just implied it sends you. I'm sorry, but he's just a better player than you, mate. Like, he's a really good talent. So unfortunately, in that particular case, and it's implied they've wanted him for a while, maybe even in Navi, maybe he's the guy from afar. You watched in the Mongols and thought, hey, he's pretty good actually. I could use him in my team. So one, that's just who Blade is. He's not an American who's going to worry about it. Well, if anything, I think his logic would be, if that shatters your mental, then you weren't the right player for me anyway, mate. Just don't worry about it. Like, it reminds me of the old school football managers in that sense. And then the other thing is, this is why Blade is predictable, but in a way that I love. If people don't know, Navi has already instantly just made cash their new permaban. If you don't know, in Navi, the whole time Blade's been there, they nearly always just instant make their veto, whatever the new map is, because their logic obviously is we want as much prep time as possible. And we want to, so they're never the team, whereas FaZe is like embrace the cash because they want the chaos of it, you know. Navi's already made it the permaban instantly. And if you know Blade, he's even the classic permaban guy, where if he plays another team that permabans it, he still bans the cash anyway. Like he doesn't give a fuck, bro. He's really old school. So I tell you what though, we can actually do quickly the last poly market, which is actually about this, which is Navi plays Legacy in the opening match of the tournament. It's obviously a team they've beaten a bunch of times before, but you have to remember, people always forget this, Legacy did actually change out their AWPer and brought in Try, the Argentinian player, who was previously on actually Zenzu's team in Passion UA, and he obviously was back in the day on a bunch of different squads. They brought him as their AWPer, so maybe interesting angle there. But at the moment, the odds are heavily from the traders towards Navi. It's 71%, Legacy's at 30%, right? We basically implied we think Navi's winning this. Is that the number you would take, though? Is 71% the right number?
I think that's a fair representation of that game, yeah. I think Legacy with Try it's going to be interesting. Legacy is not a bad team, but I don't think, I said, like it's not a team that I consider to knock on the door to be, you know, anywhere close to top 5. And I think Navi are the gatekeepers of top 5. So yeah, I'd say Navi are the favorites in that matchup. I'd expect them to win. Wouldn't be surprised if Legacy takes a map off Navi. You know, they have a pretty happy. I don't know what that is, you know, by the way. It happened at this tournament as well. They have a habit of handily beating their opponents on their map pick, go into their own map pick, and then completely lose focus, completely lose any, I guess, willingness to play good Counter-Strike, lose their own map pick, and then go in and own on the third map, you know. That's happened so many times for Navi, and I don't get it, you know. They're winning their opponent's map pick 13-5, and then you think, okay, as clear as day, it's going to be a 2-0, and then they lose focus or whatnot. You know, we even asked Blade at a tournament, and he's like, I don't know what the issue is. You know, we see it as well, we recognize it as well. I don't know what it is. So don't be surprised if Legacy is winning a map in this series, but 70-30 in favor of Navi, I think that's pretty fair. I have Navi winning that game and probably winning it 2-1.
Yeah, same. I not only think Navi wins, actually this number's bang on. I would take the 71%. I think that's accurate for me. That's what I would like. Also, I do look at Legacy, and I think Legacy are one of those teams that are like slightly overhyped by people because they won that tournament over Falcons, etc. And they had the odd little result that looked. The problem they have as a team, even with Try, who I actually do rate as a player, is it's actually the real problem a lot of the Brazilian teams have right now. Like MIBR has the same thing. You have a couple of good players. You have one really good player. You have Insania in MIBR. You have Lato in this team. But the problem is CS has moved on. This is where people don't understand that the baseline level of pro player in tier 1 is a lot better than they used to be. Like nowadays, one player popping off doesn't usually win you the series. You need actually like more. A BO3 in players. You need multiple players. You need the whole team to play well. So I do think the Lato guy is very good. He can have an exceptional series. You won't win in this matchup though. And it's Navi Pro. Like again, if you give Blade time to actually study games, it's not like a game 8 out. Remember, he's had like 3 days or something now before he'll arrive there to have studied. That he's going to actually have so many good angles on your reads, etc. So if Legacy can win, God bless, but I don't think they do. I actually think Navi's been slightly slept on. Anyway, Pip, there is one more topic for today's show, which is obviously, thanks to LFM Premium, we do a premium topic now. And I can say, shout out to the people who are the premium members. You have submitted quite a lot of topics for counterpoints. And actually, some of the old ones I haven't picked. If they're still relevant in like a future episode, I might pick that one too. But if you want a future topic to be picked, subscribe to LFM Premium. Go to last3nation.com. It's $9 a month, but you can also get it down to $7.50 if you just buy the whole year for $90. You get all the shows on ad-free on the podcast platforms, and you get the extras that are behind the paywall that come with being a premium member. So, for example, at the end of this one, the real episode will end for the rest of you, but then for people who subscribers, there'll be like a 15-20 minute Q&A where me and Pimp will ask some of your questions. Also, go and submit those questions. But if you want your topic to be here, go and put in the topics channel on Discord that it's for counterpoints, and then put whatever you want there. We will pick a topic each week. So I've picked one for this one. It's by someone called Taha, and I think you'll actually think this is an interesting one. They say, it's on the topic of Vitality, they say, despite the unlikely case he gets picked up by Vitality for some reason, how does a team like Vitality play 2 events with JL as a stand-in and not inherently increase his value by being able to regurgitate insights from the best team of all time for the next team he plays for? Has there ever been a case like this where a stand-in could essentially steal tricks from one team and use them on his next team? What about in loans? Do people ever worry that if you loan a player, he'll like take tactics or something and go back to the other team? Because he says here, I recall a host or an analyst going on to become a coach later, and players were up in arms about this. I'm trying to I think he says here, I'm remembering it was Pimp. No, he's thinking about when Moses was doing it, if you remember. Moses used to be doing the casting, and here's some of the comms for Blast, I think was the story. This was during COVID, if people don't know. And then when Moses joined Liquid, some people worried they're like, oh, does that mean, he'll have like insight into what teams are doing? So essentially, he wonders, it's quite a broad topic. Essentially, what he's saying is when JL joins, if he goes and joins, so he's not joining Navi again, but I'll give you an example. Say he joined Aurora, I'll pick a random one. Wouldn't he be able to sort of take some things from Vitality or how they operate the team, or even maybe tack caller? Would any of that be a concern? Is that something you think is a problem? What do you think?
I mean, it's something you can avoid, to some degree, especially when you're playing 2 tournaments with him. I'd say if it was just one tournament, you could take you could be very honest about it and be like, okay, so let's say it's the tournament where Apex is not playing, then you walk into that tournament and you just play as a mixed team, or you just play your defaults and then let the players do free for all stuff, and then the amount of things that the JL gets in terms of information and stuff like that, it's tendencies at best, Okay, so what does Exter say in a timeout, when is he likely to take a timeout? But that's stuff you can study anyway, by watching. So it's unavoidable when he's going to be standing in for 2 tournaments. As far as I'm aware, I've never heard of players signing NDAs or anything. Like, it's not like you can sign and be like, okay, so you can't use any of the information you're gaining here in Vitality on another team. Like, it's impossible to enforce, basically, which is the case for most NDAs anyway, which is a ridiculous concept. But I don't consider it to be an issue for 2 reasons. I don't think JL is going to join a team of a caliber where Vitality are worried about that. If JL was a super stand-in, that would go straight into Navi afterwards, or straight into Falcons, or straight into any other good team, then maybe they'd be a bit cautious with it, or maybe they wouldn't pick him, but maybe they wouldn't be able to pick him either, because why would a player of that caliber not be on a team already, right? Whereas if JL is going to join Aurora, or JL is going to join Heroic, or JL is going to join Astralis, which I seem or deem more likely of caliber of teams, then I don't think Vitality gives a damn about him knowing XYZ, about how they call, how they operate, etc., etc. If anything, it's a great learning experience for JL. And if I'm him, I'm going to soak in as much as I can, from how they prepare, from how they talk, from how they communicate. But then again, can you really expect Vitality to be doing everything they normally do when you're playing without your in-game leader, when you're playing without Messi, when you're playing also the caliber of tournaments where they're playing with stand-in? It's not an EWC. It's not a major. It's not like the biggest of biggest tournaments. So it's a good question, and it's a funny thought experiment. But I think it's a non-issue for Vitality at the very least.
No, what I liked about this as a topic, it's not a stupid topic at all. I'm not going to flame it like we do on Hot Take Point Made. But the reason I liked it as a topic is I think it's a good one to be able to sort of educate people on what it's like to actually be in pro teams. Because look, on the baseline level, you are right. Like there are literally certain things and pickups and cues you could take from being in the team that if you went to another contender, you could give them that. But the problem with that is, like you say, a lot of those things you can already pick up on rough tendencies anyway from just having a great coach, a great IGL study the demo. Like they already can sort of figure things out. They just might not know specifically the reason why they did it, but they know what they're going to do and what comes next. That's actually a part of the game that everyone's always studying that anyway. Also, secondly, that's only going to work in the really short term. Like within a couple of months, people are going to change the strats and the calls and what they do on a map anyway, because they have to as a result of playing all the other teams. And then I'll give you two angles, which is, it's more to me, not the specific call. It's more like a tendency is what you'll pick up because you'll know what that player likes. Because in VOD review, for example, he'll tell you like, I prefer this or don't go. Like I'll give you an example where this happened, which was back in 2018 when Taco was on Team Liquid, not when he was on SK, and SK had Stewie 2K, and they came and played Team Liquid at a tournament. It was a Star Series one in Ukraine. There was a game where it was on Train, and Fallen was in a 1v1 against Taco, and the story goes, I got this confirmed by like actual players, the story goes when he was in the 1v1, even though Fallen's like an amazing 1v1 player, Cold Zera actually, as he was dead, like armchair piloted the round and basically told Fallen, like when Taco was behind a position where he like could peek or hide, I think it was when the bomb was planted on Train or something, basically Cold Zera just said to Fallen, like, noobs always make the mistake first. And he didn't mean it as a diss to Tackle. What he meant was that in a pressure situation like that, players who aren't top players often will sort of like feel pressure. And so the pressure will make them be the one that peaks, for example. And basically, the reason this is an epic story is Tackle then literally in that round peaked really early and Fallen got to just kill him. Whereas if you think of like in a bomb site on Train back in the day, it's a nightmare to try and win that if the guy stays up behind and, you know, he does the ring around the rosies and everything. If you know, that can be really frustrating. But in this scenario, Cold Zera understood the tendency because he played with Tackle for all those years. Like this is the moment where he'll make this like, but you could take a small thing like that. You can maybe take, that might win you one round, but you notice that's not like, and then the next round they're going to call like, and then lastly, just to make it funny, I'll throw this in there. It's also GL, bro. What's he going to take from this? Like, is he going to remember all the strats? Again, listen, y'all know how I do, but like, I don't know if he'll even tell you his full name when he leaves Vitality, mate. Never mind all the strat bulk and fucking who plays where. Yeah, you picked the wrong person. Pick someone who has a great memory, a great mind. I'm not sure GL's the spy I'm sending in, Pimp. Like, you know, like in a spy movie, like you're looking and what's that fucking show where some guy, was it Psych or something, where the guy had like a photographic memory and stuff. You could just see, you know, you see what the bad guys have got written on the board. You can just, oh, they're going to meet at 6 a.m. You can't remember any of that shit. It's fucking GL. Bro, he's just going to come out and do some memes or some Riz or some shit, and then he's just going to go back into whatever team he's in. It won't help you at all. But I like theoretically the question. You are right. If it was a different sort of a player, like if Magus got someone joined team, yeah, I believe maybe he would be able to come and bring all that information to you. That could well be the case. Okay, that will be for the normal people, the end of this episode, but for the exceptional people, the elite of the elite, the LFN premium subscribers, we will see you any minute now in a special exclusive Q&A.